Attention, this video is audio only. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the story. Afghanistan's geography has long made it the midpoint between powerful civilizations. Nestled between ancient China to the east and Persia to the west, its valleys and mountain passes were traversed by the Silk Road's caravans for millennia. Because of this, scholars have called Afghanistan the roundabout of the ancient world. In one sense, it was always a crossroads. First, farmers and herders settled the land by about 5000 BCE. Making it one of the world's earliest agricultural zones. By 3000 BCE, simple villages gave way to towns, for example the Helmand region's Mundigak site, and Bulk in the north, which became part of the Oxus, Bactria's Margiana, Bronze Age civilization. These cities traded lapis lazuli, silk, and other goods with neighbors. Thus from the beginning, Afghanistan was connected to both east and west through goods, ideas, and peoples. The first great empire to claim Afghanistan was the Achaemenid Persians. In the 6th century BCE, King Darius I swept into the region and organized it into several satrapies or provinces: Arya, roughly modern Herat, Arakosia, the Kandahar and Kabul region, Bactriana, around Balkh, and Gandhara, the Kabul-Peshawar area. Persian administrators built roads and stood up Zoroastrian fire temples, integrating Afghanistan into a realm that stretched from the Indus to the Aegean. Over the next century, Alexander the Great overthrew the Persians. In 330 BCE, Alexander's armies captured Bactria, refounding cities and then marching into India. When Alexander died, his general Seleucus inherited Afghanistan until ceding it to the Indian Maurya emperor. Thus the Mauryan Empire briefly extended into Kandahar and the Indus Valley. Under Ashoka the Great, c. 268 to 232 BCE, Buddhism was actively supported and spread across the Hindu Kush. In effect, Indo-Greek and Mauryan kings carried Afghanistan into the Buddhist world, blending Iranian and Indian ideas. When the Mauryas waned, Greek-speaking Bactrian rulers carved out their own kingdoms. From about 250 BCE to 100 CE, the Greco-Bactrian and Indo-Greek kingdoms thrived here. These Hellenistic dynasties, such as King Menander I, known to Buddhism as Melinda, continued Greek art and coinage, even as Buddhism flourished. Archaeologists have excavated cities like Ai Khanum with Greek-style temples and theaters. Over centuries, the Greek kings mixed with local peoples. Menander famously held philosophical debates with Buddhist monks and embraced their faith. In short, Afghanistan in the early centuries BCE became a melting pot of Greek, Buddhist, Iranian and Indian cultures. By the 1st century CE, a new power emerged from the north. The nomadic Yuezhi tribes united into the Kushan Empire, 30 to 375 CE, which stretched from Central Asia into northern India. Under the Kushan king Kanishk the Great, reigned ca. 127 to 150 CE, the empire reached its zenith. The Kushans made Bactria, Balkh, and Kabul into cultural centers and turned Afghanistan into a hub on the Silk Road. Kanishk actively patronized Buddhism. He convened a Buddhist council and sent missionaries eastward, helping Buddhism travel from India to China through Afghanistan. Kushan coins bore Greek script and images of Greek and Buddhist deities side by side. For several centuries, this blend of Greco-Bactrian, Indian and Central Asian influences defined Afghan civilization. In the mid-3rd century, Afghanistan again fell under Persian control when the Sasanian dynasty took over former Kushan territory. But by the 5th century, new invaders arrived, the Hephthalite or White Hun tribes. In 484 CE, the Hephthalites defeated the Persian king Paras in battle near Herat, ravaging cities throughout the region. Afghan lands were briefly ruled by these nomads until the Sasanians and their Turkic allies pushed them back by about 560 CE. Regardless, these invasions meant that by the late antique period Afghanistan had been shaped by Indian, Greek and Persian hands, and next it was to encounter the armies of Islam. In the 7th century, the Muslim conquests reached Afghanistan. After overthrowing the Sasanian Empire in Persia, Arab armies moved east. By 652 CE, the Rashidun caliphs had captured Herat, and over the next centuries they gradually subjugated the Kabul and Kandahar regions. Local dynasties adopted Islam, often surviving as governors under distant caliphs or emerging as semi-independent sultans. By the 10th and 11th centuries, nearly the whole population had converted, with Islamic law and learning spreading. One historian notes that Islam was generally accepted as a replacement for the earlier Zoroastrian and Buddhist faiths. Importantly, in 977 a former Turkic slave named Sebuktigin seized Ghazni and founded the Ghaznavid dynasty. His son Mahmud of Ghazni, r. 998 to 1030, transformed Ghazni into a glittering capital. Mahmud's armies created an empire stretching from the Oxus to the Indus and the Indian Ocean. He launched annual raids into India, brought back immense wealth, and made Ghazni a center of Persian literature and Islamic learning. The great epic Shahnameh was completed there. Under the Ghaznavids, Afghanistan became a key frontier of the Muslim world, the place where Islam, Central Asia, and South Asia all met. By the 12th century, new Afghan powers arose from the mountains. The Ghurids of central Afghanistan, the Ghor region, fought the Ghaznavids and by 1149 had sacked Ghazni. Two brothers, Ghayath al-Din and Muaz al-Din, Muhammad of Ghor, then took over Ghazni in 1173 and led a short-lived but vast empire. By 1200 AD, the Ghurids controlled most of Afghanistan and eastern Iran, even challenging the Khwarezmian rulers to the north. Meanwhile, their general Qutb-al-Din Aibak overran much of northern India, laying foundations for later sultanates. The Ghurid era was one of great expansion and architectural patronage. Many of Afghanistan's oldest mosques and madrasas date from this time. But it proved brief. After the Ghurid sultans were assassinated around 1202 to 1206, rival Khwarezmian and then Mongol armies swept through the region. Indeed, in 1219 the Mongol horsemen of Genghis Khan stormed into Afghanistan. Over the next 2 years, the Mongols destroyed city after city. Sources report that Genghis Khan's army slaughtered thousands in Kabul, Kandahar, Bamiyan, and other cities. In 1222, when a local rebellion flared in Ghazni and Helmand, Genghis Khan's successor Ogdi ordered all men in those towns executed and women enslaved. The devastation was immense. Afghanistan was enveloped by the Mongol Empire, split between the Chagatai Khanate and the Ilkhanate. Much of its population was killed or displaced, and major cities lay in ruin. It would take decades for urban life to recover. A century later, late 1300s, a new conqueror would sweep through once again, Timur, Tamerlane, the Turco-Mongol from Samarkand. Timur made Kandahar and Herat into garrisons on his way to India and the Middle East. But the lasting legacy of this period was cultural. Timur's son Shah Rukh moved the Timurid capital from Samarkand to Herat. Under Shah Rukh, r. 1405 to 1447, and his brilliant vizier Gauhar Shad, Herat blossomed as a Renaissance city of the Islamic world. Grand madrasas, palaces and mosques were built, Persian miniatures and poetry flourished. The famed art school of Behzad operated in Herat's workshops. Even today, travelers can see the restored citadel and Friday mosque dating from this golden age. Thus the ruins of war gave way to one of Afghanistan's richest cultural eras. In the 16th century the tides turned towards South Asia, but Afghanistan was still in the middle. A Timurid prince named Babur made Kabul his base after capturing it in 1504. From there, after losing and regaining Samarkand, Babur invaded India. In 1526 at the Battle of Panipat he defeated the Sultan of Delhi and founded the Mughal Empire. Interestingly, Babur always considered Kabul part of his realm. He later built his famous gardens there, even as his descendants ruled India. The coming centuries saw Herat and Kandahar contested between Persian and Mughal hands, but the idea of a distinct Afghan state was emerging. The decisive moment came in 1747. Following the death of the Persian ruler Nader Shah, Pashtun chieftains in Kandahar convened and chose Ahmad Shah Abdali, Durrani, as leader. Shortly after, Ahmad Shah captured Kandahar, Ghazni, Kabul and Peshawar. He united the Afghan tribes under his Durrani dynasty and pushed his army as far as the Oxus, Amu Darya, in the north and the Indus in the east. The British and Russians later called this the First Afghan Empire. With its center in Kandahar and then Kabul, the Durrani state is considered by many the foundation of the modern nation of Afghanistan. Ahmad Shah and his successors, like Timur Shah, ruled a multicultural realm of Pashtun, Tajiks, Uzbeks, and others. But after Ahmad Shah's death, the empire fragmented into rival Afghan principalities, Herat, Kabul, Kandahar, etc., and lost some conquered lands in India. In the 19th century, Afghanistan was caught in the great game between Britain and Tsarist Russia. To the British in India, Afghanistan was a buffer against Russian expansion. They intervened in 3 major wars. The First Anglo-Afghan War, 1839 to 1842, ended disastrously for Britain, the retreat from Kabul, but the Second War, 1878 to 1880, gave the British control of Afghan foreign affairs through the century. Afghanistan remained officially independent but with a British resident in Kabul. The country's emirs played the two empires off each other. Finally, after World War I, Afghanistan threw off foreign control. In 1919, Emir Amanullah Khan defeated the British in a third short war. By the Treaty of Rawalpindi, August 1919, Afghanistan's borders were recognized and it became a fully sovereign kingdom. In 1926, Amanullah proclaimed Afghanistan a monarchy, the Kingdom of Afghanistan, and undertook social reforms. His successor Zahir Shah continued modernization in the 1940s, 60s. This half-century saw schools built, roads laid, and women's education begun. Still, most Afghans remained rural, and tribal loyalties ran deep. The modern Afghan state was thus still fragile and new. Afghanistan's recent history has been dominated by conflict. In July 1973, the king was overthrown by his cousin Daud Khan, who established a republic. Just 5 years later, on April 27, 1978, communist officers launched the Saur Revolution, killing Daud and setting up a pro-Soviet regime. Repression and factionalism followed. In December 1979, the Soviet Union, alarmed by the chaos and anti-communist insurgents, invaded with hundreds of thousands of troops. A brutal decade of war ensued. Afghan Mujahideen fighters, armed and funded from abroad, fought the Soviets and Kabul's regime across the mountains. The Russians finally withdrew in 1989. Within a year, the Afghan communists also fell. This left a power vacuum. Rival guerrilla factions turned on one another, waging bloody civil war in the ruins of Kabul and Kandahar. Out of this chaos, the Taliban emerged in the early 1990s, a militant Islamist group led by Mullah Omar, mainly Pashtun, who had fought the Soviets. By 1996, the Taliban had captured Kabul and declared the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. They imposed a strict version of Sharia law, for example, closing schools for girls, and enforced order with harsh penalties. The Taliban regime was recognized by almost no one internationally. Meanwhile, the Northern Alliance, a coalition of Tajik, Hazara, and Uzbek leaders, held pockets of resistance in the northeast. After the September 11, 2001 attacks on the United States, a US-led coalition invaded Afghanistan to topple the Taliban for harboring al-Qaeda terrorists. The Taliban government fell quickly, and Hamid Karzai became leader of a new Islamic republic. For the next 20 years, Afghanistan received massive international aid and military assistance. Elections were held, and infrastructure, schools, roads, media, expanded. But insecurity remained high. Taliban insurgents fought on, especially in the south and east, and al-Qaeda and ISIS affiliates appeared. Corruption and civil strife also plagued the Kabul government. In August 2021, the United States withdrew its forces under President Biden's plan. Almost overnight, the Taliban swept through the country again. On August 15, 2021, they entered Kabul with little resistance. The republic fell. The Taliban announced the re-establishment of the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. This marked the formal end of the 20-year U.S. war. The world watched as the group that had first ruled in the 1990s took control of all provinces. Afghanistan today faces a complex situation. The Taliban's rule is not recognized by most of the international community. Western aid and investment have largely dried up. The economy has collapsed. By some estimates, GDP fell nearly 28% in 2021 alone, leaving a majority of Afghans in dire need of food and services. Human rights observers note that the new regime has restricted freedoms, especially for women and girls. Schools for girls above age 12 remain closed, and women are mostly barred from jobs outside the home. On the other hand, the Taliban claim they have restored security and are negotiating some aid with the United Nations and neighboring countries. In sum, the story of Afghanistan is one of incredible resilience amid upheaval. For over 50 centuries, it has been shaped by waves of conquest and cultural exchange, from Bronze Age traders to world empires, and yet the Afghan people and their tribal traditions have endured. Today's Afghanistan remains at a historical crossroads. Its rugged mountains and diverse peoples, from Pashtun and Tajiks to Hazaras and Uzbeks, carry the legacy of empires past. As one aid worker recently put it, Afghanistan has the poorest population, but also the most ancient history, a reminder that every era adds another layer to this land's complex tapestry. The future is uncertain, but the country's ancient horizons have seen change before. For now, Afghanistan stands in silence, waiting for the next chapter in its journey.